Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to present this slide presentation from the comfort of my studio. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there, but I have trouble traveling. Now that I'm an old man, I still am very much in the game. I enjoy my career. I spend the week making the components, and then I have Dave Graver and my son Joe come in on Wednesdays generally, and they help me put it together, which is really nice. So in the first slide, I wanted to acknowledge, first of all, I want to acknowledge my wife, Pat, who's been a very supportive partner. You know, it takes a lot of work to float a career. And Pat's been very, very supportive and encouraging. And really a beautiful, beautiful partner. We're married 57 years. May 2nd, 57 years. But you know, the Paperweight Collectors have really been a beautiful resource for me. Berks-O'Malley Museum has been a learning experience. Corning Museum of Glass, Wheaton Arts. I've enjoyed the paperweight dealers over the years. I go back to first selling work in 1971 to Arthur Gorham, and he was a paperweight dealer in Millville, New Jersey. And then my work was sold by Terry and Arthur Greenblatt, Jack Feingold, the Kaplans, Leo and Ruth, and having a senior moment. Alan, excuse me, had a senior moment with your name. Larry Selman, George Cam, you know, Dunbar. It's really been a beautiful journey. So I started out by completing a program at Salem Community College. At the time, it was called Salem County Vocational Technical Institute. And that predates the community college and then the community college system. And in 1972, Salem Vocational Technical Institute became Salem County College, 2-year college. And this is the center shot is a view of a 20,000 square foot facility. It's really a remarkable program. And I'm very proud to say that the facility is named the Paul Stankard Studio and Lab, which is very sweet. I worked in industry for 9 years, including my 2 years at Salem. And on the left, I'm doing a distillation head for the company Roman Haas, a chemical company in Philadelphia area. I left in 72 to devote full time to my my paperweights. And then on the right, I have Wheaton Arts in Millville, New Jersey. And these three images represent the glass that I was exposed to in the South Jersey area. The Southern New Jersey has a very rich glass tradition. And one of the crown jewel of that tradition was the paperweights. So Women's Day had a featured article, a major feature article on antique French paperweights, and I believe there was some contemporary paperweights. Does anybody know if Charles Casian? I think Charles Casian was in that group. So a neighbor knew I was interested in paperweights. I was interested in paperweights at the time. It was interesting. And she gave me this magazine, and the magazine was just a joy. I would just study the antique French paperweights, and I believe I was looking at a Charles Casian rose, and maybe there was Paul Stankard, I'm not sure. But this was an inspiration to me that really energized strengthened my desire to learn how to make paperweights. So I first started, let me go here. I started with animals because prior to the paperweights, I had been making giftware, little small animals, slingwork animals, elephant, horses, birds. And I was augmenting my salary with the glassware. I set up a flame working facility, bench and torch, and set up the facility in my utility room. And I used to make the animals and I'd sell them to gift shops. But about 6 months into making the animals, I got really bored by it because, I was just doing repetitive work. So I decided that I knew about paperweights, and I knew that Charles Casian and Frank Whittemore were both scientific glassblowers, started out as scientific glassblowers. So I started to practice trying to make paperweights. And I could make the animals in the paperweights, but it wasn't until I did a flower that the flower really energized my interest. And I got so excited about it. So this 52-year journey started with the animals. Maybe there were about 10 or 15. And then went to flowers, and I make a blossom, and then I would think, I did the blossom. What else can I do? So I remember putting a stem and some leaves on the blossom. And next was a bud and another blossom. They kept evolving, and I got so excited with the idea that I was, with myself, inventing this botanical vocabulary to capturing glass. And then as the work became more complex, I started to make botanical portraits with damselfly and honeybees and ants, things like that. Oh, I think I had damselfly, honeybee, and ants. And then on the right, mountain laurels was quite a challenge. It took me about 5 years to master that. I didn't experiment all the time, but I would periodically experiment trying to translate the blossom in glass. And finally, I spent about 30 days just focused on it. And I succeeded. I felt very proud when I realized that I was getting closer, and then made that final effort to translate the blossom. And then underneath is what I call assemblage, and that's encapsulating my colored glass flowers and cutting and polishing and laminating them together. Now, I worked with Jim Shore for probably 40 years. Jim is my glass cutter and polisher, and he laminates the glass into different forms, which was really, I enjoyed working with Jim. He's really a talented glass cutter, glass craftsperson, artist craftsperson. So that's, I'll show examples of the assemblages a little further into the lecture. And then more recently, I have these, what I'm calling curved cubes. And that's a new design, encapsulating my floral design into a cylindrical form and then pressing it into different shapes. So let me go back to here. So native flowers have been my passion. And over the years, I've invented a vocabulary, a botanical vocabulary in glass. You know, my whole journey has been experimenting, trying to develop the illusion of the organic illusion of credibility. And really enjoyed the theme because it took me back to my childhood interests in the woods, picking blueberries, just discovering the woods. And it was really been a beautiful, I have beautiful memories of my childhood experience in the woods. Other examples of my work, here's the Mount Laurel blossoms and how I interpret it and incorporate it into a design. In the center, I have blueberries, pineland prickleweeds, and morning glory. Oh, not blueberries, I'm sorry, blackberries. So I have blackberries clustered into, it's a cluster of flowers and fruit. And there's an ant on the yellow pineland prickleweed. It's kind of interesting. And then below it, I have another cluster of blueberries and a damselfly and different wildflowers. To the right, blue-eyed grass with my early, this was in 1972, my 72, 73, my interpretation of the blue-eyed grass in glass. So I'm going to show you a video, a 3-minute video of my sculpting a blossom, a flower. And let me get this thing going here. Here we go. So this process is called flame working. And I have a bench burner and I'm melting glass in a gas oxygen flame. That gas oxygen flame is 2200 Fahrenheit. And I'm using simple tools, tweezers. Oh, yeah, that's a lot better. And my son Joe is documenting this with his camera. It was interesting because the glass doesn't conduct heat. So I can hold my glass rods very close to the flame and not be uncomfortable with heat. So here I'm making sepals, green sepals. Now I'm pulling down the stamens, the yellow glass, to become filaments in the blossom. The blossom consists of sepals, petals, stamens. The stamens are filament and an anther. So here are the filaments. And I'm showing the filament onto a pistil, the ovary of the pistil. I don't know what it is about the video filming the material. It just looks larger than life. If anybody has any questions about the process, let me go through the 2 videos and then I'll be happy to answer questions about the process. I think, I know Eric Jump worked very hard to make this presentation possible and make it attractive. So shout out to Eric jump. So I'm putting the stem onto the flower. Separated the glass from the pistil. Now I'm going to seal the anther on the tip of the stamen. The anther is the section that has pollen. That's where the honeybees and the insects collect pollen to fertilize the pollinate the flowers. There you go. Now that will be put in the oven and annealed, and then I'll take it out of the oven and build it into a design to complete my design. So here's another picture of, here's another video of my making a figure. This is what I affectionately call the root people. It started out as anthropomorphic roots and evolved into what people call root people. Figures, I like to call them figures. And they're based on mid-12th to the 15th century medieval herbals, where when they did wood cuttings of botanical portraits, they would incorporate human forms into the flowers and under the plant, mandrake and what have you. It's funny when I put one figure into the design, it's a bit of a curiosity. And then I put two together, and that's even more curious. But when I put three in there, it becomes erotic. I don't know. I mean, the people try to think, what's going on? I think this video was done about probably 10 years ago. I'm not too sure. I never wanted my figures to be, you know, fairies or brownies or, you know, just whimsical things. They're figures, and they're very, I didn't vary with the form. And I think of them as adding ambiguousness to the designs. It's, they really, it's kind of hard to explain, but I think I often think that they suggest unseen energy under the earth. So that could be that. So here we have botanicals, how the work evolved. For maybe 20 years, I would incorporate human forms into my floral design. Not all, enough where people have come to enjoy and look for the figures, but not everything had the figures. But then about 2000 or so, I really started to feel, you know, I wanted to do something other than the figures. So I came up with what I call masks. And here on the left is a botanical with a mask. I would cast the mask, paint it with white enamel, and then incorporate it into the design. And this is a bouquet with a honeybee floating above the bouquet, roses, blueberries, pineland pickleweeds. and then the masks. The masks weren't very successful, interestingly enough. And I loved them, and I kept making them, but there was a little bit of resistance. People thought they were death masks or something. I don't know what the resistance was, but now they're very popular in the auction houses because my work is now, I guess I'm old enough to have work in auctions all the time. And the masks bring a bit of a premium, which is kind of interesting. Okay. So the process, I flame work this, my assistant, Dave Graver, and I. Dave's gathering glass and we're dropping it onto the color glass. I take the components and I build my flowers. All of the botanical components are on a hot plate. And I have a Bunsen burner under that plate. And then with a hand torch, I melt my flowers into a design, place it on a plate with a cup around it. And then we heat up the clear glass and then drop it into the colored glass, onto the colored glass. Now, I guess about in 1985 or so, I brought in a glory hole to help me heat up the glass. And that was a wonderful addition to my process because prior to that, for like, I don't know, 15 years or so, I was heating up the glass on a bench burner. But when I got the glory hole, it made it much more comfortable and it was more, I could heat the glass in a comfortable way. I could be dancing with the punty in the glory hole and get it good and hot and drop it onto the colored glass flower. So that was a wonderful innovation. And there's the glory hole. And over to my right, this is a design that showed up in the early 2000s where I got all excited. I wanted to have fuzz on my fruit. So I worked on the idea, I did some experimenting, and I finally got it. And it was, I'm really proud of my fruit. And the fuzz, I said, Dad, look at my fuzzy balls. She said, why don't you stop that? Why don't you just grow up? I said, well, look at it. He said, well, they're interesting, but I wouldn't call them fuzzy balls. Okay. So that was it. That was interesting. So in 1985, 86, I didn't feel that my work was evolving to the extent that I wanted it to. And it was, I felt like I hit this invisible wall, a glass wall. So I started to, it's funny, I started to write poetry. And it reminded me when I was a youngster in grammar school, I was a poor student because of undiagnosed dyslexia. And my mother would tutor me to read. She would help me read. I'd have to practice reading every night, which was a real drag. But when somehow she, I don't know why, but it was a real blessing from my perspective. Instead of trying to read the juvenile stories, she flipped to children's poetry. And she would recite the poem, and then I would recite the poem. And with my good memory skills, and with the in combination with the children's poems, I could read it, and that was very exciting. So I think my interest in poetry as an adult came from reading children's poems to learn to improve my reading. So I started writing poems, and I thought, well, if I'm going to write poems, I should be more familiar with American poets, or even world poets. So I came across Walt Whitman as considered America's most significant literary genius. And I started reading Whitman, and it really touched me. I have on this slide two sentences from the Song of Myself. And the narrowest hinge of my hand puts to scorn all machinery. Now here I am, been working with my hands for probably 25, 30 years at the time. Let's see. 25 years, mid-80s. And it really resonated in my soul. The narrowest hinge of my hand puts to scorn all machinery. And then another poem that touched me, a morning glory at my window satisfies me more than the metaphysics of books. And that strengthened my interest in Whitman, those poems, the words, the sentences, and his poetry. And I'm proud to say I'm one of the trustees at the Whitman Cultural Center in Camden, New Jersey today. So here we are in the studio. I have made these blocks, encapsulating my flowers in blocks and encapsulating the masks. And then the golden orb, I have fine gold leaf that I ball up, clear glass, and I wrap the hot little ball with gold leaf. And then I send it to Jim Shore, and Jim cuts and polishes and laminates it. And in this particular piece, I asked Jim to laminate a sheet of black glass behind it, behind the clear. And wow, it was a wonderful, it advanced my aesthetic in a wonderful way, because all of a sudden flowers were suspended in space. And that was a wonderful discovery. And that's what my work has always been about, discovering ways to share my interest in nature through the glass. Two other pieces, an 8-inch orb with a honeycomb, flowers, and about 35, 40 bees buzzing around the center. And that was commissioned by the Minkoff, Robert Minkoff, a dear friend who passed away about a year ago. Robert has these two pieces are in Robert's collection. He passed away and donated his collection of 134 pieces to the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, Washington. So that was interesting. But I really like this triptych. Instead of an assemblage, I call the smaller piece a triptych that has 3 panels. And it has roses, mountain laurels, golden orb, morning glories, and lilacs. And here's recent work. This is a 6-inch swarm, I call them. And then the cube is a banded cube. And then the orb on the right. And it's really been a fascinating, I really enjoy my schedule and my pace. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I've already, hey, I've been at it from, Jesus. I started in 69, so what are we up to? 79, 89, 99. So we're over 50 years. So I'm just enjoying the work and inventing new ways to interpret nature. If you look onto Swarm, this has got a Paul Stankard signature king. And there's a nice story behind that. This is a recent design. It's top and underside. And my photographer, Jeff DeMarco, really talented person, I asked him to see if he could photograph the work rotating, and he said, sure. And so this is one way to show both sides. But I want to show you something on this tonight. I'll go, let's see, there's this, if you look down, I wonder if Eric will tell me if you can see the cursive. Can you see the cursive on my print?
Yes, we see this cursive.
Okay. So if you look where my cursive is, this is a signature cane. I call it a signature cane. It's Paul Stankard. And a friend of mine, very talented, Lawrence Stump, who is known for his portrait canes, and he has made paperweights, very beautiful portrait canes embedded into and made into paperweight patterns and made into paperweights. And so Lauren made the cursive Paul Stankard cane. So it's interesting because I was so happy to have this cane. It's cursive, so this really took some talent to make that cane. So in November of 2021, I started to use that cursive cane exclusively. And my fantasy is, or my thoughts are, that people will identify the time period which the work was crafted. It would be with the cursive Paul Stankard cane. It would be from 2021 forward. And I really hope there's there's more, I hope there's a lot of forward in the usage of that cane. Okay, so here's dear friends, Rick and Clara Ayotte, Pat and I, and the mystery is we are too old to remember when this photograph was taken. It was most likely a paperweight conference. And you know, it's been a journey. It's been a beautiful journey. I went to work, in my first job after graduating from Salem was a scientific glass company in Nashville, New Hampshire. And I met Rick. Rick was a scientific glass blower. And I showed up. And we became fast and dear friends. I mean, I was out of town and didn't have a car. And Rick was very, you know, we would hang out, and Rick introduced me to some of his friends. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was, you know, I wasn't sitting in a boarding house room wondering what the hell why I was so damn bored. All of a sudden, I had a nice social life with Rick. And so Rick and I, actually, interestingly enough, we talked about making glass art. We talked about making money with animals and paperweights and this and that. And Rick knew a fellow at the beach, I think, there was a scientist, no, there was a glass blower who made novelties, I guess you'd call them, at a beach studio. And so anyway, I'll talk more about Rick and Melissa's work a little later. Oh, here it is. Here's later. So, you know, Rick started, I guess, in I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years after I started. And I really enjoyed, not only the friendship was solid, but we would talk about process and techniques and we're all sorts of technical information we were sharing. And Rick was as dedicated to his the art of the paperweight as I am. He still is dedicated to it. And Rick, I focused on native flowers, and Rick focused on birds. And so it's fascinating. And I think that, 25, 50 years from now, people are going to look at the American paperweight makers, the studio artists making paperweights in this time period. They're going to put together some phenomenal collections that will include Rick's birds, and it will also, Melissa, his daughter, is doing remarkable work. She's taking a more sculptural approach. So Rick was talking about developing techniques to paint on, I assume it's sheet of white glass, and incorporate his flame work components into the design, into that environment. And on the upper left, he has a cardinal on a branch in a fall setting. And I believe that is at the First Museum. And then below, he was experimenting with the magnification, multiple illusions that are mirror images. Unbelievable. Now, I don't know, here's a rose that's in the center. I don't know if Rick or Melissa make this. Probably they both, maybe they helped each other, but this is remarkably incredible. I can go out my back door in the summertime, look at roses. That's exactly how they look. And then we have Melissa's work, which is beautiful. And she takes her mechanical motif and encapsulates it into wonderful forms. And I think that, the paperweight aesthetic is evolving into other forms, becoming more sculptural, celebrating the, whether it be nature or what's the word for birds? Whether it be birds or flowers or what have you. So it's fascinating how the paperweight world is, paperweight aesthetic is evolving. And here's my beautiful friend, David Graver, who worked for me for 25 years. It was a pleasure. Dave and I we're very compatible. And Dave's very serious about his work. He worked for me for 25 years. And I was getting slowed down, and I wanted to just slow down. And Dave said, "Well, I'll go on my own." And I said, "Well, if you come in once a week to help me put my work together, that would be wonderful." So that's what we arranged. And I look at Dave's work, and I think Dave is incredibly talented with detail. I mean, he's really knows how to put it together. And I think his work is becoming sought after in the glass world, which is kind of interesting. And here's something that I think is fascinating. This is Allison. Rusa. And she takes, I didn't know, I've watched her work over the years, and I've been curious, but impressed, but not curious enough to really try to figure it all out. And then recently, I thought, how the heck is she doing that? And Dave told me she's using Paradise paints. She's painting with the high firing enamels onto the blanks. And then as soon as she anneals the glass, takes it out of the oven, well, she'll paint the landscape on the clear glass, anneal it, and encase it in clear glass, anneal it, take it out of the oven, and then paint another layer of information, visual information onto it, encase that, and then anneal it. And I don't know how many times she does it, maybe 2 or 3 times. I think they're remarkable. So there you go. Congratulations, Allison. And here is, oh, this is a nice story. I just finished a book. I worked on it for actually 4 years. I spent 2 years writing it. I sent it to the publisher, and COVID-19 hit. Oh, right. So rather than just say, well, it's finished, I kept refining it, noodling it, and I obsessed over it for 2 years. Now it's going to be out. I think it might be out by the time this lecture is given. I better hurry up. Oops, let me go back. So in addition to this, the inspiration from the art of Paul J. Stankard, I wrote an autobiography that was published in 2007, No Green Berries or Leaves, Creative Journey of an Artist in Glass. And then sparked the creative flame. My daughter's working, and my daughter, Chris, and Kathy, my daughters, Christine and Catherine, both worked for me. Christine for about 20 years, and then Catherine for 15 years. And they, and it was wonderful. I loved having my daughters working. Pauline, my daughter Pauline now manages the studio. Pat doesn't have a computer. She's not interested. She does everything longhand, the old way. And then she hands it to Pauline, and Pauline puts it on the computer. And it's a way of they say, well, we're checking each other. So I wrote 3 books, and then the most recent book is kind of talks about taking your work to the next level, be creative. It's kind of an inspirational book. And I believe this will be I believe this most recent book will be as much a part of my legacy as my glass. I think, maybe, doesn't matter. But I wanted to share my experience with creative people of all mediums. So that's my story. And I don't know if we have time for questions or not, but I hope we do.